Peter, what has the new coalition government agreed to do on nuclear weapons and defence?
Well, the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats have published a coalition agreement document which highlights what they will be doing on the main issues. And there are three things in it on defence and foreign policy issues. The first one relates to a strategic security and defence review. They'll be commencing work on the review immediately with the involvement of the Treasury. Now, the Treasury input here is important because it means that cost issues will be very much under the spotlight. The second thing is in relation to Trident nuclear weapons. And the two parties have said that they will retain the current Trident nuclear weapons system, but that they will scrutinise the value for money of a replacement for Trident. And the Liberal Democrats will continue to make the case for alternatives to replacing Trident. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly I think, the government has said that it will immediately have a strong input into the non-proliferation treaty review conference and continue to take steps towards multilateral nuclear disarmament. So three areas of focus: strategic defence and security review, Trident nuclear weapons, and the non-proliferation work.
So that statement suggests that the new government wouldn't be sympathetic to demands to scrap Trident nuclear weapons.
Well, scrapping the current Trident system was never really on the agenda. All three of the main parties in their manifestos for the election said that they were committed to keeping the current system. The issue is really about replacing Trident, and this is where things get interesting. During the election campaign, Labour and the Conservatives both said that they did not want to include Trident replacement in a defence review, and their reason for that was because it had already been debated in Parliament back in 2007. Now, obviously, a lot has changed since 2007. The coalition deal agreement between the two parties says that Trident's replacement will be scrutinised for its value for money. And clearly the simplest and most straightforward way of scrutinising it would be including it in a defence review. So it's very important, I think, that disarmament campaign groups continue to push for Trident replacement to be included in a defence review, writing to MPs, for example, to say a defence review would be the best way of investigating the need for replacing Trident and how much that would cost, and whether it would represent value for money alongside the work done by the three armed forces.
Okay. What role should the new government play in the non-proliferation treaty review?
Well, it's very simple, really. I think William Hague needs to go straight over to New York and say to the conference very clearly that the United Kingdom shares President Obama's vision of a world without nuclear weapons and is serious about reaching this goal. Three things, for example, that William Hague could do. The first thing he needs to do is say very clearly that the UK is serious about nuclear disarmament. And secondly, do something to show that they're serious. That could be something very simple, like publishing a declaration of the United Kingdom's inventory of nuclear warheads, a similar step to one just taken by the United States government. Thirdly, I think William Hague needs to also say that the United Kingdom would support the introduction of a nuclear weapons convention. Now, a nuclear weapons convention would be an international agreement that would ban the possession or the use of nuclear weapons eventually. Clearly, that's a long-term goal, and it might not be the British government's immediate priority to introduce a nuclear weapons convention, but it's important that the government says that they would eventually support its introduction and that they wouldn't block work starting on negotiating a convention.
So, who are the key ministers in the new cabinet who will control these decisions?
Clearly, Liam Fox, the new Defence Secretary, is going to be a key player. He was the Conservatives' front bench spokesperson on defence issues for several years. He knows his brief, and I think there's a hope that he will be able to deal with some of the structural issues in the Ministry of Defence, some of the management and budgetary problems, which I think it was felt that towards the end of the Labour government, ministers were unable to get to grips with. Now, Liam Fox is considered to be towards the right of the Conservative Party. He's strongly in favour of nuclear weapons, and we can expect him to make the case very strongly in Cabinet for replacing Trident regardless of its cost. On the other hand, we also have William Hague as a big fish in the Cabinet. Now, William Hague has shown a very keen interest on nuclear non-proliferation issues, and he's broadly supportive of taking steps, negotiation towards a world without nuclear weapons. And it's also said that David Cameron strongly supports him on this. So perhaps there's something there that will act as a rein against the pro-nuclear elements in the Cabinet. Also important will be the junior ministerial appointments in the Foreign Office and the Defence Ministry. On the Foreign Office side of things, we might expect to see David Liddington appointed. He has been the Conservative spokesperson on proliferation issues. He takes a progressive view on these things as well. In the Ministry of Defence, another possibility would be the appointment perhaps of Nick Harvey, who was the Liberal Democrat frontbench spokesperson on defence in the previous Parliament. If he's appointed as a junior minister, then we can expect to see nuclear weapons looked at critically and a push for Trident's replacement to be included in the Defence Review. Other possibilities on the Conservative side who might take a similar view are James Arbuthnot, who was chair of the Defence Committee. He has questioned the costs and affordability of Trident, and he said that he thinks Trident replacement should be considered as part of the Defence Review. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there.
Okay. Is the new Parliament likely to be keen on renewing Trident?
CND have been looking at the new MPs and doing the sums, and their view is that the numbers of MPs who are opposed to nuclear weapons in the new Parliament is broadly similar to the numbers in the previous Parliament. Now that Labour are in opposition, we may see a few Labour MPs coming out and beginning to question the need for replacing Trident. We will certainly see the Scottish Nationalists, Plaid Cymru and the Greens continuing their opposition to Trident and replacing it. The big question mark, of course, is about the Liberal Democrats, and now that they're in government, will they water down their opposition to Trident replacement? The indications are that they probably will not, and they will keep up their critical approach to this issue, because the coalition agreement that they've reached with the Conservatives specifically says that the Liberal Democrats will continue to make the case for alternatives to Trident replacement. We'll have a chance, I think, to gauge the level of opposition to new nuclear weapons over the next few weeks, when an early day motion is put forward about the initial gate decision on replacing Trident, with a call for it to be debated in Parliament. I think that will give us the gauge as to how many MPs are prepared to put their heads above the parapet and oppose nuclear weapons.
Finally, what's the bigger picture facing the new government on defence and military issues?
I think that bigger picture is going to be absolutely dominated by costs. The government's economic priority is to fill the current fiscal deficit, and it's said that it will prefer to do that by making spending cuts rather than increasing taxes. So that means that the Ministry of Defence is going to be very much on the front line when it comes to cuts issues. Ministry of Defence is already facing a £35 billion black hole in the defence equipment budget. It's already spending huge sums of money on a massively expensive continuing war in Afghanistan. So there's very little room for manoeuvre on cost cutting in the Ministry of Defence. That means that Trident replacement is still going to be very much under the spotlight. So it's very important, for example, in the campaign work that anti-nuclear groups do, that they keep on raising the issue of Trident replacement and how much it's going to cost, questioning the need for replacing it, and very importantly, pointing out some of the sacrifices that we're going to have to make if we replace Trident, in terms of local services, cuts to benefits for needy people, cuts to local schools and hospitals. I think there's everything to play for here.
Okay, Peter, thank you very much for your views.